I'm Daniel Searle.
And I'm Corey Baldwin.
And today we have with us Lee Miller, Elite Hoops Basketball. You see it on his shirt. You'll hear all about it and how he got there as we go through this podcast, this new Off the Beaten Path, a show for basketball coaches living in obscurity, working in obscurity, and even those who have made it out of obscurity, not just through hoops, also in the world of business, right, Corey?
That's correct. That's correct. We got a great one here today. And it's a place for storytelling, learning. We're all time learning stuff on and off the court, connecting, reconnecting, and food for thought. And my favorite part, food for the belly. All right, let's jump right in, man. Lee Miller, I guess we met probably about 20 years ago, actually a little longer than that, about 25 years ago. You were a graduate assistant at UGA and working camps. And here we are about 25 years later, and now you're one of the gurus of hoops in Atlanta. So walk us through a little bit and tell us how you got started. What made you love basketball first?
Yeah, what made me love basketball, I played locally in Atlanta at St. Pius High School and was a basketball player, but just loved the game of basketball. Was probably a little bit better at baseball, but the team sport and the stuff, that happens on the court, so much more movement, so much more energy in the game of basketball than baseball, and made my way up to the University of Georgia, worked as a manager up there. And as you mentioned, a graduate assistant, and got some great advice from a lot of coaches, and helped me along my career path over the past 25 years for sure. Jim Herrick was very instrumental in that, the head coach there at Georgia from 99 to 2000 to 03. He was instrumental. Had a couple really good conversations with him when I was graduating, and helped pave the road for where I'm at today, as well as with Jeff Dunlap, who was an assistant coach at the time and was an absolute monster in a good way in the camp business out in California, with a former NBA player named Jack Haley, and worked his camps out in California, and just said, man, there's a huge market for what this guy is doing out here, and took some of that model and brought it here to the Southeast.
Now, when you were at UGA, hold 1 second before we go into the camp world. When you were at UGA, walk us through who all you worked for as a manager and as a GA. You were with 3 coaches, correct? Or was it just 2?
Just 2. Yeah. So
okay.
My high school coach at the time had reached out to Tubby Smith about being a walk-on. I had some Division II offers, but honestly, growing up in Atlanta, I wanted to go to a decent-sized city, and all the Division II schools were, in tiny towns, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to 100% sure play basketball anyways in college at a small school. So my coach had written Tubby Smith, and sort of had the opportunity to do a walk-on tryout. And that was when, I guess that was my junior year or beginning of senior, whenever he left for Kentucky. And Jersa took over and said he already had those 2. Ron Jersa was the coach after Tubby, and didn't give me that opportunity. But somehow, and honestly, I can't remember, I got connected with Andy Landers. And so my freshman year, I practiced with the girls team. So there was about 6 or 7 guys, and we scrimmaged and practiced the girls on a pretty regular basis. And talk about amazing. I mean, obviously, you're an 18-year-old guy. You're thinking, all right, these are girls playing basketball. That program at the time was top 5, top 10. But it was legit how serious those girls were. That's and awesome. So did that my freshman year, and I got connected with Ron Jersa at some point, and gave me a proposal to be a manager with them my sophomore year. So ended up scrimmaging, thought I was going to get an opportunity to actually walk on and scrimmage with them and practice with them for a couple months, and had some physical issues in terms of couldn't get past. I had some it's not a major issue now, but I have a heart defect, and this was right after Hank Gathers and Reggie Lewis with the Celtics. And so the UGA people just were like, man, we're not even remotely touching, a walk-on that has a health issue. So he gave me an opportunity and said, hey, you can be a manager. You can't walk on, but we'll pay a couple $1,000s to be a manager. And that was a game changer for me. Help pay for my tuition and be around the program. So I did that with him. That was my sophomore and I guess sophomore and junior year. Sophomore year only. And then Jim Herrick came in my junior year, and I graduated a little bit early is when I started grad school.
Hey, Lee, before we dive into, because we want to hear all the stories from back in the day, off the beaten path, and managers and scrimmaging on the women's side, all of that is part of that path. St. Pius, such a strong basketball program over the years. Coach Parr's got it rolling right now, but tell us about your Pius experience, from coach to teammates to where some of those teammates might be now, that connection that you still have.
Sure. Yeah, I went to Catholic school at Immaculate Heart of Mary, which is one of the feeder programs for St. Pius.
Mm-hmm.
St. Pius had a great program for a number of years. I remember probably the first time I remember going to St. Pius games was when I was about in 5th or 6th grade. Obviously started attending their summer camp, and they had a guy by the name of Jonathan Kerner, who was about 5 years older than me. Ended up playing for Eastern Carolina and Florida State, and had a couple stints in the NBA. But he went from 6'3" to 6'6" his sophomore year to 6'9" to 7 foot his senior year, and helped lead the team to the state title game against Dontonio Wingfield, and that was Westover, I believe. And so I came in right after that. I'm sorry.
Right. Yes. Good. These are the kind of little stories and connections going back into Georgia high school hoops that we love.
Yeah, that was like 91, I believe. And so I started at Pius 2 years later. We had some great seniors that I looked up to. When you mentioned some of those older players' names, Mike Schrage was a teammate. He's 3 years older than me. But he was an assistant at Duke for a number of years, went out to Stanford, was recently the head coach at Elon, and just took an opportunity back as a special assistant to the head coach, John Shire, there at Duke. And we had a couple players that played Division II, Division III. It was an amazing program. Our head coach was also the athletic director, a guy by the name of Mark Kelly. Did an amazing job, coached the North-South All-Star game in 1997. We were a pretty good program, but we were sort of on the edge of old school basketball and new school basketball, I guess, as he was a coach from the 80s and sort of trying to learn some of the stuff that was happening in the 90s. But we had a really good run. My senior year, ended up losing to Central Carrollton in the Sweet 16. And we had, the cool thing about our that team that I was a part of, we had 9 guys that went on to play college sports. 0 of them played college basketball. We had a tight end for the Georgia Southern, who won the 1AA program football, and a tight end on the Miami Hurricanes national championship team in 01. A couple of big time baseball players and soccer players, but not one of us played college basketball.
Well, you kind of did, right?
I mean, I would be the closest. I would be the closest. But yeah, literally, we had 9 guys that played big time Clemson and Army and Citadel and a bunch of big time schools, but no one played college basketball. So
that's
just
a
athletes.
Great story. Nine players go on to college sports, but not in hoops, from a Sweet 16 team. Love
Correct.
it. Yep. Jump us back in that year with the UGA women's team. Landers was the head coach. Who was on that staff? Do you remember the assistant coaches or a couple of those the players on that team?
I don't remember the coaches, but I do remember Kelly and Coco Miller. They were from Minnesota. They were my age, and it was funny. Obviously, we were the same age. We're both freshmen, and people always wondered if I was connected with them. Were they really were we triplets or what? But and Keisha Brown, who went to Woodward Academy. She might have been a year older than me, but those 3, I remember, again, scrimmaging those girls. They were somehow the 1, the 2, and the 3 out there on the court, and they were freshmen and sophomores. And again, just being the 18-year-old boy thinking that girls probably couldn't play, I was absolutely amazed. And we would get schooled by those girls. Right. I mean, we really would get schooled by them because they were the top 10 girls in their position. There was a girl from Russia, a big girl, like Elena, but I can't remember. Those are the 4 that I remember pretty good. But they were pretty much consensus top 10. And we would scrimmage them, like I said, pretty often, sort of at the end of practice. And I just remember Andy Lander's practices were absolutely no joke at all.
So those stories are real. And you mentioned Keisha Brown, who's doing extremely well coaching over at Galloway now, bringing that girls program up. And she needs to be somebody we invite on the podcast going forward. But love the Kelly, Coco, and Lee Miller trio back in the UGA women's hoops. All right. And now you mentioned this name. I know Corey's eyebrows went up there when you said Jim Herrick. Right after Jersa, you've got Jim Herrick coming in, Dunlap, and the rest of that crew. You got to tell us 2 or 3 stories from the Herrick days, because of a lot of success there with Georgia basketball. The men's team was back on the way up.
Yeah, he was an absolute great leader of a program. I mean, he's one of those guys really stepping back now, 20, 25 years later, saying that he's the type that could run a basketball program, but he could have also run any type of business or organization. I mean, a true leader in all sense of the word. Never heard him use profanity. Always, even in our camp this morning, I had one of our camp meetings, and we steal some of his stuff is internally in our program, we say OEPP. So all of our stuff is organized, energy, praise, and police. And the 2 Ps I picked up from Coach Herrick, I do not remember a time where he didn't praise someone before he policed them for whatever they did wrong. We had a guy named Rob Dryden, and 7-footer, should have played in the league, but an example I give people is he would say, Rob, you're too fast of a player to be running that slow down the court. So the first thing that Rob would hear was, man, I'm a fast player. And then he'd hear the negative. And he did that time in and time out. And I really think that set the tone for the culture, and why still people talk to him this day and message them. And, whenever they're out in California, visit with him. He was just a great leader. So he did an amazing job bringing players in, recruiting them, making it feel like a family atmosphere there up in Athens.
Let's hear that again. OEPP. What do those each stand for, Lee?
So we use that in our organization, Elite Hoops. The first one is organization. So anytime, and this is more for our coaches, if you completely forget what drill we're supposed to be doing running, or our lead skills coach is helping a kid, he's off the court, the first thing we need to do on the court is organization. Get the kids in orderly lines, make sure the groups are even, put kids in the right groups. So the first thing is organization. The number 2, second one is E for energy. So we want the kids and the parents to both feel the energy of our gym. The next P is praise the kids for the positive things that they're doing, whether they're helping out a teammate, making a good pass, running down the court. And then the fourth one is police them. Let them know what they're doing wrong. Maybe not cheering on a teammate, maybe not making the right pass or to the right player, or taking the right shot. So organized, energy, praise, and police.
Corey, is that what's going on out in your court right now? You got a OEPP going for summer camp at South Georgia State?
We do, but I'm in here, so it might not be now, right?
Well, that's part of the business model, though. Lee will tell us about that, right? You got your coaches doing the same thing. You can trust
That's
it.
true. That is true.
Right.
They do it better sometimes. So when you were at Georgia, Lee, before we leave that, Dunlap you mentioned, but you also had some other guys on that staff, and obviously we're mutual friends with Steve Miss, who was a GA with you, and then later an ops guy now, and had an unbelievable run as a D2 head coach, now athletic director. Who are some other guys? Chad Warner, I think. I'm answering the question as I'm asking it, but who are some of these guys out there?
Yeah, Chad Warner was coming in just as I was leaving, and I actually connected with him about a year ago. I went down and visited him down there at Flagler, doing an amazing job for that Flagler program. We also had a guy by the name of Michael Hunt, who's back in coaching, I believe, down in Miami, was the head coach at Towson for a number of years. As we mentioned, Jeff Dunlap, and then the one I probably connect with the most is Reggie Rankin. He was an assistant up there, worked for Ohio before that, had a long run, probably 10 or 15 years at ESPN and Rivals, and has been with the Golden State Warriors for a number of years now. So I connect with him whenever he comes into town. And then the guy I reported with for 1 year, reported to, was Travis Schlenk, who's now the general manager of the Atlanta Hawks. I actually texted with him the other day right before the draft. So his kids are in Catholic school at Christ the King here in Atlanta. And so our daughters play each other in basketball. It's funny, I ran into him when we played each other this year, and I said, here we are, 2 guys who are leading pretty big basketball organizations, and our 2 daughters might be the 2 worst out there, right? It's the cobbler's kids never has shoes. We're too busy doing our own thing to teach our own daughters basketball.
How about that? Hey, our last episode that just came out, Coach Huff, we talked about name dropping, and we were keeping the counter going for him with the little dings. We're about 13 minutes in. You might be catching up pretty quick with a chance to overtake Cabral Huff on the name drop. So keep them coming.
Let me know how many more I need, and I'll try to get there.
There we go. Well,
hey, I requested it. Just so you know, I did request it.
Okay.
Hey, what about Miss? Was he a GA with you, or was he a manager with you, or was he ops
Yeah,
when you were
he
there?
started out as and I don't know if you've had Miss on, but his story, and I'm gonna chop it up a little bit, but yeah, he was I don't know if you know, I mean, he was a Wall Street trader, went to the Trinity School in Dublin for Irish theater, played a little pro ball over there in Ireland. And the way he got in at Georgia is for Jerse's first year, he just sat in the bleachers and took notes for a full year. And just sat there and said, "Hey, can I take notes on basketball?" And literally, I talked to some of those guys. Said, Miss was in there 100 days, 110 days of practice, just taking notes, not asking to be paid or be a part, just taking notes. And finally, they're like, "Hey, look, we need someone to help us out in the office. You want to help us out a little bit the next year?" So we did that. So yeah, he went from Wall Street to Irish theater in Ireland, and to leading, as you mentioned, an incredible program up there. So him and I are really good friends. I probably talk to him I won't say every month, but probably every 6 weeks, just talking about sports and being leaders in the sports world, and innovation and all that good stuff. So incredible mind, incredible leader, and a really good guy. Steve Miss.
Awesome. All right. So when you leave Georgia, as you're there, you started doing more camps, I guess is what you were kind of saying with the Jack Haley camp. I saw where you did Pete Newell's camp. Can you tell us a little bit about that before we?
Yeah, so going back into the camp side, I can't remember the place in Athens. It was one of those like little mom and pop places, but it was spring of my senior year, I guess. I had graduated and started some grad school, and I was at lunch with Coach Eric, and we talked about opportunities about coming back full time, and he said, "Lee, you're too much of a business guy to get into basketball." He's like, "Don't get into basketball, go do business." And I really respected him for it. And so, he offered me some type of position the next year. I can't remember what it was, ops or, admin or whatever it was. And, but he's like, "You need to go get in business, go to Atlanta, go make some money." And so I really heeded his advice. And so, left Athens and took an advertising sales job in Atlanta, but loved basketball. And so started doing some things in the evening, training players, working camps. Those two camps, the summer of 99 and 2000, I was still at UGA, and Jeff Dunlap invited me to go work his Jack Haley's NBA complete player camp in Huntington Beach, Newport Beach, and Calabasas. And they had an operation, man. I mean, like none like I had ever seen. They ran 4 or 5 weeks with, hundreds of kids at camp there in Southern California. Had the stations down, the energy, the effort, the playbook of how to run camp, and super successful. And so I was, 19, 20 years old and just literally taking notes. I still have a bunch of notes from those summer camps, and took that model. And when I came back here to Atlanta, I was working in advertising sales, but said I missed basketball. And so the first camp I ran was at Milton High School, summer of 2004, and just tried to replicate what Dunlap and Haley were doing there in Southern California.
How about that? You've mentioned Dunlap. You mentioned that business in California. My memories of him, and you for that matter, is coming out to work UGA day camp, sleeping on the couch in your apartment, and just soaking in that Dunlap energy at camp. Can you describe what, boundless yelling, positivity, connectivity, all of that comes from him? Where is that? How does he do that every day?
Yeah, he just always did that in his workouts. That's where I grew a love for the coaching side of basketball, was him doing individual one-on-ones. We had a guy, name drop, Damian Wilkins there at Georgia. And we had guard workout or point guard workouts, wings and centers workouts. And JD was responsible for most of them, but Damian Wilkins would come in for all three. I mean, most guys would come in. Rashad Wright would come in for the point guard workout, and Ezra would come in for the guard or wing workout. Damian Wilkins, that sucker, I mean, he would literally come in for all three workouts multiple times a week. But JD's energy that was his personality, and it was infectious, and it allowed players to be motivated and not remember the sprints. They remembered the energy part of it. And so I picked that up from JD, how contagious it was and how it didn't feel like a workout, whether as a coach or as a player. And I saw him take that into the camp world as well. And that was him and Jack Haley and all the guys, a guy named Ryan Boehm out there in Southern California who was working camp. And I just saw how contagious that was. I hadn't really been exposed to that much energy from coaches before, and how it didn't make it seem like it was a job or something you were forced to do. And I saw how easy that made camp run, and how easy it was for players to work hard in that environment. So day by day, week by week, over 5 or 6 years, I sort of transformed who I was on the court from watching those guys and bringing a lot more energy to the court.
So while you're doing this business in Atlanta, you're selling jeans out of your house. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Was that when that started, or was that a little bit later?
So I was in advertising sales and making really good money for the time. I mean, I was making $55,000, $60,000 a year in advertising sales, 24, 25 years old, and doing some things, coaching in the evenings. And I knew I wanted to do this full time. I was working on my MBA in marketing at Mercer University, and we had to do a business plan as one of our projects. And we had to do a business plan. And so the business plan was Elite Hoops, a full-time, year-round skill development camp and training company in Atlanta. And so for probably another 6 or 9 months, I continued in my job. But every morning, no joke, Corey, every morning I would go to my computer, I'd type up my resignation notice, print the new date on it and sign it, and I put it in my jacket. And I said, today's the day I'm going to quit. And I would go out and get a sale and make money. And I was like, man, the money's too good. Like, I'm not going to do this. And finally one day, I can't remember the circumstances, but my boss called me in and said something to me. I can't remember what it was. I pulled the note out of my jacket pocket that I'd probably printed for, 80 straight days or 100 straight days, and said, "It's no longer for me." And she was like, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "I'm going to start my own basketball business." And so anyways, going to the jean story, I thought, hey, I'm going to get 200 kids at camp and I'm going to crush this thing. I literally went from that $50,000 a year job to the first year I ran Elite Hoops, I made $3,000, 2004. $3,000. So I valeted in the evenings, I delivered pizzas, and I sold jeans on eBay. I found ways to entrepreneurial spirit. I'd always been an entrepreneur since I was like 8. And so I found there was a Filene's basement in Buckhead. I saw that these off jeans were selling for like $80, and all the girls in my office were buying them for $150. And so these jeans had a missing belt loop or had a missing stitch. And so I saw a huge market for it as eBay was taking off. So I'd buy them for 80 and I'd sell them for like 120 online to every country across the world. And so sold thousands of pairs of jeans, literally.
Oh, man.
At, like a $10 to $30 markup on each pair.
Nice. I love it. That's a great story. It's a great story. So when you first hit this, how much of your business plan that you did at the Mercer Masters class, ended up being your real business plan, and how much was it? You had to change a lot, add a lot, or whatever.
I would say we're probably, in terms of the culture and sort of the OEPP and another acronym I'll throw at you in a minute is LAST. Those types of things still exist. It is 20 times bigger than I thought it was at this point. I really didn't think we were going to have facilities. We're about to open up our 3rd facility this fall. Didn't think we'd have facilities. I wasn't sure about AAU teams that we offered for a number of years. But yeah, in my biggest dreams, when I was doing that as a project, did I ever think we would be at the spot we're at today? So culturally and motivationally and energy-wise, we're still going down that same road. The depth and the breadth that we're at as a business is tenfold to where I thought it would be, for sure.
Now, were you still doing advertising when you were working with some of the high schools? I know you were an assistant at, back home at Blessed Trinity. I know you were assistant at, South Gwinnett and Norcross, and I know you did some AAU stuff as well. Was that while you were doing advertising, or was that more while you were getting Elite Hoops going?
So Blessed Trinity was when I was still doing advertising sales and had just begun my MBA. And I got connected out South Gwinnett. I was started to train some, pretty good high school players, and got connected there with the head coach at South Gwinnett, who needed a freshman coach, Roger Fleetwood, who was the coach at South Gwinnett. I actually invited him back. He's coming in town here in Atlanta about 3 weeks to hang out for a couple of days and speak to some of our campers, and I love connecting with him. He gave me an amazing opportunity to work with him, and he needed a young guy on his staff to work out players and things. So I got connected with him. So Blessed Trinity was when I was in advertising sales, and then South Gwinnett for 2 years, and then Norcross for a year was while I was starting Elite Hoops and working on my MBA.
Who was the head coach at Norcross? Was it Martin or
Eddie Martin?
Eddie Martin.
Eddie Martin. Yeah. And Jesse was on our staff. Jesse was the JV coach. Keenan Temple, who was at Johns Creek, was the varsity assistant. And then the freshman coach was Greg Phillips, who's at Berkmar High School. And then myself.
Wow. Great staff.
Yeah.
What about when you were at Blessed Trinity? Who was the coach there then?
Brian Marks was the head coach. He is now at Holy Spirit in Atlanta as he's not coaching. He's now the dean of admissions there. But we weren't a successful basketball program from a record wise, but I said we did something right because that year that I coached there, I think we were 0-27, but 3 of our guys are now high school or college coaches. John Crimmins was a part of our program. He's now a college coach. John Domville is now the head girls coach at Creekview, and Patrick Hughes is at Wesleyan. So while we might not have been successful teaching them how to play basketball, at least we taught them how to coach basketball.
And to love the game, right? But
right.
Put it in perspective, what year was that of the Blessed Trinity program? Where was the school and the basketball program? That was
it was the first year of the program.
Exactly.
Gary Liner actually, sorry, I take that back. The first year Gary Liner was the head coach. He had worked for Bobby Crimmins at Georgia Tech.
Right.
So it was his first year. And then I stayed on when Brian Marks was the head coach, and Brian did an amazing job, led them to the state championship game, couple elite eights. But that first year was literally the first year of the program. That would have been 2001, 2002. Yeah.
I saw Gary Liner officiating a basketball game about 5 years ago.
Did you really? Yeah, he's he's had, I don't know, 10 or 15 different positions over that time. Interesting career, bounce back and forth all in basketball.
Well, that flash you back to Georgia Tech basketball camps, Corey?
Yeah, it was taking me back for real right then. I was remembering, he ran them basically when Jimmy Hebron used to get us to go work them. Yeah. That was back when I played. I mean, it was a million years ago when I was a player at Clayton. I was thinking right now, jumping back a little bit. I know we're not going in order here with the time, but I just had a thought. Ron Jerser is still in coaching. And I mean, how long has that guy been in coaching? I mean, I saw he's assistant at Greensboro now, I think. I know he was at Radford.
I don't even know where he's at now. I actually talked to him, I guess it was probably like 3 years ago. Somehow he got my number and called me about some players in Atlanta. I can't remember what the players were, but he was there that my sophomore year there at Georgia, and had been an assistant under Tubby, and then they promoted him. But I think he got fired. He was 35-30 and got fired at Georgia, which was interesting. If you want a story on that one, if you guys haven't heard that, we were 12-3, top 25 in the country, had an incredible schedule that year, 12-3, and then we fell off the cliff. And he went to the players at the end of the year and asked them if they wanted to play in the NIT. And this was Gigi Smith, Ray Harrison, who went to Dunwoody High School. Obviously, I don't think Jermaine was involved in that decision because he wasn't a senior. John Nordine, a couple other guys. And they said, man, we'd rather go on spring break. Like, we're just, we've lost 12 out of 15 games or whatever. And he sort of overruled them, apparently. And so I remember we went to Clemson and just absolutely got annihilated at Clemson, first round of the NIT. And Miss, as you mentioned, Miss and I, and we're in the locker room. And after the game, it was Vince Dooley and Michael Adams came into the locker room. And if memory serves me correctly, we never saw Ron Jersa after that. He didn't drive back on the bus with us. Yeah. He didn't drive back on the bus. Yeah. If memory serves me that correctly, he might have been in the office. I don't think he was even in the office the next day. And apparently that's when everything happened. And it's pre-YouTube, pre-Twitter, and so you don't really know the stories. But yeah, those two guys came in the locker room, took them back, like in some part of the locker room or whatever. And no one ever really, coaches and players didn't see them after that.
What's funny is I always remember as a fan, kind of doing sports talk. Sports talk never talked about Georgia basketball. They probably don't even now in Atlanta, but they definitely didn't then. And they did a whole day where they just bashed Jerser for not playing seniors on senior night. He didn't start them. And that was that year. And I don't know if you remember that or why that was a big deal, but I can remember it like it was yesterday. I mean, people calling in, going crazy. And it was like, man, the first time ever they talk about Georgia basketball, and it's not for a good reason. And then, like you said, shortly after that, everything, I didn't know if that ever had nothing to do with it or not, but I always remember that, which was kind of weird.
Yeah,
The other thing I remember
I
about
don't remember
Jersey,
that. I don't remember that specifically. Again, when you're a part of the program and 20 years ago, pre-internet, you're sort of insulated from a lot of that stuff. I don't remember that specifically, but in his defense, I guess probably senior night, he's literally fighting for his job at that point, you know. So while he probably wanted to play seniors, he also said, man, if that gets us down the whole 8-2 because we're playing people we shouldn't play, he literally was fighting for his job at that point. So
I think it's
in
always
defense
a
of him,
coach's decision on that. Yeah, for sure. I just thought that was crazy. I remember that being just such a big topic that day. It was on what was Domino and Gelini that used to do a show, and I think they still do some stuff. Yeah, they're still in it somehow. They're still involved in Atlanta sports. But anyway, last one I saw, Jerster, he was actually in Waycross recruiting a kid one night here, and I asked him, "You miss anything about Georgia?" And he said, "Yeah, Athens." I was like, wow, that was a pretty good answer. But anyway, Cyril, you had a couple of things here before we go all in elite hoops here. What you had one more.
Got to finish up the Georgia crew there with Michael Hunt. You said, as we were talking, Ron Jersa, now an assistant at UNCG. Where did you say Coach Hunt is back into coaching?
He's back at some high school in Miami. I think he's been down there for 3 or 4 years now.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, I haven't spoken with him, but probably 2 years ago, one of our camp guys or someone down there had mentioned it and sent me a link. And so, again, I don't know this upcoming season, but he was coaching at one of the private or pretty known schools down there in Miami. I think he was probably in year 3 or 4 down there.
Okay. I'll have to track him down because, you know, we tell our stories about getting into coaching. He was one of the first people that I sent a note to. I was helping out with Riverwood JV at team camp at Tennessee, and he gave us a locker room tour. And you send him, "Hey, Coach Hunt, thanks for the tour." And, you know, ever since had been in touch as he went through his time then at Georgia and Towson and other stops. So
I remember when he was. Were you up there that first year in Towson?
No, I came up the second year after Miss.
So he. After I graduated, this was probably when I had those conversations with Herrick. He had hired his first 2 hires. I can't remember who. I think one of them, I can't remember who his first 2 hires were, but he called me and asked me if I was interested in the third spot up there as an assistant. He's like, "Hey, you'll be, you know, one of the youngest people." And I was like, "Yeah, you know, I think it sounds like a great opportunity." Went and talked to my dad later that night. He's like, "Well, what does it pay?" I was like, "I don't even know. I didn't even ask him that part." So I called him the next day and whatever it was, he's like, "It pays 11.8." And I was like, "Per what? 11.8 per?" He's like, "Well, that's what I have left." And I was like, "Yeah, I can't move to Baltimore, Maryland for $12,000. Sorry."
Well, I did. Great experience, I gotta say. You make it work, and you decided to go a different path and build the business. So tell us about those building blocks from, you know, the master's degree to the time from Herrick, who you say can run any kind of business, to your own brain and the way your brain works. But how'd you go from camps at night to about to open your third facility, Lee?
Yeah, so it was the 2 things that I loved the most was basketball and business. And I was caught in those crosshairs of, I loved basketball and I love coaching and teaching, but I was also a driven business person. As I mentioned, I've sort of always been an entrepreneur since a young age, always trying to make money and run businesses. And what I liked about the business side is that the more productive you are, the more you can provide for your family and hire other people and things. And the basketball side of it, just connecting with players and having that community aspect and reaching a goal with the players. So I knew I wanted to run camps, train players, and do all that good stuff. So put together a business plan, began running camps in 2004, ran a showcase actually down at Clayton State as I was trying to figure out the business. Back in September of 2004, we had 77 players at Clayton State for a showcase. And just over the next, I guess, probably 5-6 years, sort of figured out what I was really good at and what we could really offer. And over those next 5 or 6 years, I saw a huge niche for not just in Atlanta, but other cities. There was rec and church ball, and there was AAU ball and big time trainers. And there was nothing in between. There really wasn't.
Mm.
There was summer camps, but there wasn't for that. For me as a type of player, the pretty good 7th grade player who might not be on an AAU team yet or be a part of a program. 15 years ago, there wasn't anything for them. As I mentioned, there was church ball, rec ball, and there was AAU. There was nothing on a consistent basis. And so then as I had nieces and nephews, I saw that, again, 15 years ago, saw that they were going to gymnastics on a daily basis or karate classes or swim classes. And I said, man, why is there nothing like that in basketball, right? There's an occasional camp here and there. So what I crafted is what other sports have done. Soccer academies is have daily classes at a set location with a set coach on a recurring basis. And so the original business plan was just renting out dozens of facilities across the Southeast and offering that. And then we had our first opportunity in 2018 to open up a facility in Shambler. We opened up that one in 18, expanded it in 2019. 2020, we opened up one in Alpharetta. And then this fall, we're going to be opening up our 3rd location in Flowery Branch, Georgia.
So locations, the physical building space, Lee, tell us about the challenges there. You have to fill the space with activities to make it quote unquote worth it. How do you do that? How do you make it all kind of connect there on the business side of it?
Yeah, great question. So I always tell people our business used to be the food truck business, right? So food trucks are awesome because if you're not selling great at Peachtree and Piedmont, you pick up your food truck, and you drive 3 blocks north and see how your sandwiches sell there. The great part about that is you're agile and you're mobile and you can move wherever the market is. And that's what we did from 2004 until 2018, honestly, is rented different facilities. And if facility X wasn't working after a while, we'd, close that lease out and then move to another location. Now we're in a whole new ball game. We're in the restaurant business. So as a food truck grows, they open up a restaurant, but now you have a lot more overhead costs. So the pros of it are you can grow a lot more. You can offer a lot more. You're not at the beck and whim of athletic directors and coaches or churches wanting only to rent at certain times. We'll have 3 facilities that I can run programming at 24/7, 365. But now we have a monthly bill that we have to pay and 24 employees that we have to pay on the 1st and the 15th. So now we are having to fill those things. And so now it's just taken on a little bit of a different game as opposed to finding the best location for a part-time. Now we're finding full-time locations moving forward.
Interesting. And that overhead versus flexibility, mobility there. Why is the having the space been the way to go? Where did you decide it's time to build and have that control?
We, as I mentioned, we opened our first place in Shambler at the beginning of 18. I really probably started looking at it in 14 or 15 as an idea. I did like the flexibility, but honestly, we just weren't big enough and didn't have enough capital saved and business plan for that next realm. The part where I got to is seeing how much basketball had grown. Unlike a lot of businesses, to get in the camp and training world, there is absolutely 0 barriers to entry. If you want to open up a coffee shop and compete with Starbucks, you're not going to buy coffee on a street corner from some guy just selling coffee, right? You are going to find a physical location. But in our world, we were competing, and there's hundreds of good basketball coaches and trainers in Atlanta. I always tell people that. There's hundreds of them, but there's no barrier to entry. So it's a propped open door at Riverwood High School for that guy, or he's going to take our kids and work them out for free. So we were always competing with, even though we had great program, great coaches, we were always competing with that new up-and-coming coach or trainer who could get the gym for free and who was willing to do it for free. And that's really tough to compete with. Again, going back to Starbucks, if there was a guy right next to Starbucks selling coffee for free because he wanted to get in the business, it would be tough for Starbucks. So now having these facilities is twofold. One, it sets a barrier for entry and it elevates our game. I was completely unaware at how much better it looks and feels for parents. When parents come into our facilities and they actually see all of our branding, our marketing, the music flow that's at the same facilities, our look and feel of the facilities, it sets their mind at ease versus going into a prop door at a high school on a Sunday morning, right? So that's super nice. The second part is back in 2016 and 17, we had 3 of our best coaches, full-time coaches I've ever had, and really 4 of them, and they all left within about a 2-year period. And on their exit interviews, a lot of them said, Lee, there's you and there's us. We've sort of maxed out what we can do, our camps and our workouts, and it's just not enough money for us. And so for me, the facilities were the way to grow the business, to keep good employees, honestly, more than anything else. It's that now we have opportunities for people to grow within our business. We, gentleman Paul Evans, who played at Mill Creek High School and University of Virginia Wise, has been with us, was with us part-time from 14 to 18, full-time for the past 4 years. And he just got promoted to run our new Flowery Branch location. So the other, dozen employees underneath them sort of look at it and say, hey, if I bust my tail for 3 or 4 years, there's an opportunity for me to run a facility and have more leadership abilities and to make more money. And so that's something that for the first 10 years or so, we really didn't have. Now that's a huge win for our business and keeping really good coaches.
That kind of takes us to the employment part of it. How is it when you're hiring employees? What is it, the stuff that you're looking for? Are you looking for former players, guys who want to get into coaching that might leave?
Well, the first thing I have to ask is, does anybody who listens to this podcast work for the IRS?
No.
Okay, good. Okay, then I can answer these questions. My mom worked for the IRS for 30 years, so she always joked and said, if anyone comes up and says, are you Lee Miller, say, do you work for the IRS? That's the first question to ask. Corey, so what I did the first 10 years, 11 years would hire, what I would consider big names or people that played at, I would look at resumes and people would say, yeah, I played at, Louisville, and the guy fits the bill or the girl fits the bill, 6'5", and played overseas for 6 years, and they averaged 20 points. I'm like, man, this person's going to be awesome. I'd sit down across, on video or in a meeting at my desk for 15 minutes with them. They would tell me about their energy and their passion and all that stuff. Then I'd get them on the court, and they just weren't, that Jeff Dunlap, Lee Miller, Gannon Baker type person that I needed. So really about 5 or 6 years ago, we changed. The best people, honestly, for us, if you tell me the stereotype, give me the low Division II, Division III person who has a chip on their shoulder, who connects really well with kids. I don't care if they average 3 points or if they average 20, but typically I found the Division II, Division III guy, girl that has a chip on their shoulder, maybe played a little pro ball, maybe didn't, but just is hungry and is that super hard worker and super passionate. And then the big thing for us is everybody in Atlanta, every coach that I interview with, can train and work out the stud 17-year-old. That's the easiest thing in the world to do. Give me the stud 17-year-old and train them. The best trainer can do that. The worst. Can you do that? And can you also work with a rec kid who just began and make him feel hungry for the game of basketball and passionate and willing to work on his game? Can you do that beginner, that intermediate kid, and then that stud? And those are few and far between, honestly. Everybody can do the high level kid. Can you do all three? That's where you're really going to be successful in our business and really make a lot of money.
And one more follow up on that with some of these employees you have are a lot of them looking to get into coaching, or some of them just trying, hey, I need a job. I mean, how is kind of all over the map with it? What have you seen?
Yeah, for the most part now, we only hire full-time people. During the summer, as I mentioned, now we have probably about 3 dozen people on payroll just here in Atlanta this summer. Some of those are high school coaches. We have Samir Sanu, who's Mohammed Sanu's brother. He's now an assistant coach at Lakeside High School. He's working with us, for example, at Shambler. A bunch of college players who are possibly looking to get into it. But as our company and other people have made basketball a full-time business, I found that there's a lot of people who got into high school coaching because they like basketball and they needed a job and they didn't want to do what I did. They don't want to work at Home Depot or something during the day and coach. They end up getting into teaching. Where I saw when I was at South Gwinnett and taught for a year, I basically figured out I was teaching for 8 hours a day to do the 2 hours that I loved. And now we've provided people an opportunity who really love coaching, and kids can do it full time and make a teacher salary or more than that by literally coaching and teaching full time.
Let me follow up with this without, and I'm not being rude when I say this. Are there some that when they get there, they love it because it's the development? You see kids improve, whether, like you said, it's a kid just learning now becomes a kid that can make a team or try out for a team or whatever level it is. They see the improvement. But do you also see some who maybe don't like it because they don't get to see the win or the loss on the scoreboard or their name in the paper? You know what I'm saying? I know how some people are.
Yeah, I would say, and that is a good point. I always tell people, The difference from us versus coaches is that as a coach, you get to know 12 players very intimately. You know their uncle's name, you know everything about them. We, as I tell especially our directors, Cam Daly and Khalil and Paul Evans, you become small time famous. I mean, those guys and girls in their little communities, you're small time famous. If you go into the Publix or you go to the local rec park, there's 1,000 kids and the 2,000 parents that know you. And that journey, while we don't get the wins and losses, that kid going from the seventh kid on his rec team to playing freshman basketball and scoring 15 points in a game, we don't have the highs aren't as high and the lows aren't as low, but we have a lot more medium-sized highs as opposed to those 20 wins that you can have a year. We have possibly 365 smaller wins when kids are really successful each and every single day.
It's interesting. And speaking of uncles, you mentioned uncles. We got to talk about Uncle Miller, the ad campaign that ran through social media. Tell us a little bit about that. We all loved it.
So when that ran, I'm sure you've heard the phrase, when you have lemons, make lemonade. It was the worst 2 or 3 months of my life. We had our Shambler facility up and running, and we were paying on our Alpharetta location. As I mentioned, now we're in the restaurant program, a restaurant business in terms of having facilities, had a payroll and had a huge monthly cover we had. And, Forsyth County and DeKalb County limited or actually shut down what we could do. We couldn't do anything. And we were at a crossroads. Business was horrible. We literally had all of the expenses as we had in February, all the employees, same lease payments, same SBA loans, and we had zero revenue coming in. And the last thing I wanted to do was fire anybody or lay anybody off. I mean, that was literally the last thing that I wanted to do. And long story short, we, went to my wife and said, hey, here's our life savings, and we got to put this back into the business to keep it afloat. I don't want to let these people go because they had been so good to us, these employees. So we figured out a way. We started doing some Zoom classes for free and just trying to keep people involved. And so one of the people who worked for us was sort of a full-time coach and videographer. And again, to go back to the make lemonade out of lemons, I said, let's do something fun. I don't know if you guys know this, but I did stand up for 3 years. So
no, come on.
I did stand up.
Right.
I did stand up for 3 years. So I don't have it as much in me now because I'm so much more in the business mode. But I said, we got a court. We can't have kids in here. But I can have an employee here and he can shoot some video. So I went back to my stand-up days and sort of came up with some things. And so we came up with a little spoof that I had an uncle who originally had the business, and he owned the copyright to Elite Hoops and wanted some royalties back from us. And the funny thing, I'll have to show you some screenshots, but after I released like video 2 or 3, it was insane the amount of messages that, I probably had, no joke, 30 people. Alan Whiteheart was one of them at Milton High School. He sent me a message and said, hey, my wife's is an attorney at a big time firm. Let me know how I can help with this situation. I kid you not.
No.
I kid you not. And there was other people. I had probably a couple of mentors of mine who are, 50s or 60s are like, hey, look, Lee, I'm connected. And, some people sort of knew that it was a joke, but I'm not kidding you. There was 50 people that called, texted, emailed, said, let me know how I can help. This is absurd. I can't believe that he's doing it. Let me know how we can help your program. And that made it even that much better.
Absolutely. Wow.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
So,
all right, well, now it's that time of the show where we're going to the lightning round, Lee, and we kind of get, we're going to have 3 or 4 questions from each of us, and we put the shot clock on these so we don't go as long. And
what's the shot clock, just so I know?
We kind of say it's a minute, but it's probably not. We still allow stories and name drop, but we just try to hurry up, without the clock moving, I guess you'd say. But anyway,
we're trying to fit into Georgia high school hoops here as the shot clock comes in and manage that too, right? See if we can get some reps in.
But does Elite Hoops have shot clocks ready? I need to know that before we get into the lightning round.
We do not. We are not shot clock ready. We just we have coaches that know how to cadence their own count of 24 seconds.
I got you. All right. All right.
He's
Well,
down
I'll
to
start us
24
off.
seconds, coaching pros.
Yes.
Yes, right.
All right, sir. I'll start us off. Lee, I always go into food first because that's the most important part of the day. You were in Athens a long time. Give me your favorite place to eat in Athens.
De Palma's. De Palma's, hands down. I still every time I go back to Athens and I have a night that I have to eat a dinner, De Palma's on Broad Street in downtown is my go-to.
And what's your meal when you go there? What is it you're ordering?
Their little onion rolls to start, and then their lasagna, without a doubt, and a Coke. Yeah, I'm a caffeine guy.
I love it. I love it. And what's your favorite place to eat in Shambler?
Taqueria del Sol. It's right there in Chamblee. There's a couple locations. I think there's 3 locations in Atlanta, but Taqueria del Sol is hands down number 1 in Chamblee.
Man, I love it. Lee Miller was ready for this. I think he's watched some episodes and was studying.
Right. He's got
Alpharetta. What's your favorite spot?
At Halcyon, it would be Hobnob.
I
like
Cherry Street. Mussels at Cherry Street. Try that.
Okay. Next time.
I like it. All right. And then with all the old heads, I'll call them the old heads, all these great coaches you worked for, what was the one thing that one said to you that maybe as a younger adult, when you heard it, you said, man, what the heck? But now you look back and it makes you even realize how much more wiser they were.
We touched on it a little bit, but I can tell you exactly where I was. And sort of the first time that I heard it, it was right after Coach Herrick was hired. So it was our first summer camp. He got all of the coaching staff together, some of our coaching staff, and then the people who were coming work summer camp. We were sort of in the concrete. This is time. Sorry. It was Jim Herrick. Before our camp. He gathered all the coaches and he said, it's amazing how much a player's hearing improves when they hear praise. Praise them, praise them, praise them. So that's, since we're on a shot clock, that's the story. It's amazing how much a player's hearing improves when they hear praise. Praise them, praise them, praise them. And I tell that every week to our coaching staff.
I remember that I worked some of those camps that year. I don't know if it was the first one, but I know it was his first year. And I remember he had a meeting, and my favorite line he said was, I still remember it was, he said, I'm not going to tell you John Wooden's the best coach there ever was. I'll just tell you he's the only coach there ever was. I thought it was pretty good. I remember thinking, wow, I never heard that one said like that. That was pretty good. All right. And then my last one with all the players you worked with. Obviously, we haven't touched on Lou Williams yet, but he's obviously going to be up there probably on this question, and you can talk some about him. But give us a lower name guy as well that kind of sticks out with you on like just their work ethic, improvement, always kind of admired a player or whatever. And then you can give us a Lou Will story in there too.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say a lower level, but the biggest competitor and the hardest worker, without a doubt, was Malcolm Brogdon. I had an opportunity to start working with him after his freshman year at Fayette County High School before he went to GAC, and started work with him 2 to 4 days a week, all the way through GAC before he went to Virginia. And he texted me a couple times, random times, of getting in the gym. One time was after, and I can't remember which came first. He texted me right after they lost in the state championship game, his sophomore, junior year, and said, I'm paraphrasing, what do I have to do to not feel this feeling again? And then another time he texted me the Friday night before homecoming, looking to get in the gym, like at 9:00 at night. It's like, hey, coach, can we get in the gym? So Mark Fox had just been hired at Georgia. I was working their elite camp. I had worked a bunch of those guys. I think Damian Wilkins was actually pulling him back in, was there. And Coach Fox knew that I knew some of the players, and he's like, Lee, who do I need to get in the shooting contest? And I had worked with all of these guys for a pretty decent amount. I said, Malcolm Brogdon, Drawn Blossom game, and played at Norcross, Jeremy Lamb. I said, those are your 3 guys. And afterwards, I was like, Coach, offer all 3 of these guys today. And he's like, well, we need to do some. I'm like, and they were, I think, rising juniors at the time, and they didn't have big time offers. But going back to Malcolm, I tried to get as many people on him as possible. I mean, his trajectory, I don't know which way this shows on your screen. He got better, worked harder than anybody else. And on his workouts, we went from making 50% of his shots in practice to we got up after his junior year, he had to make 70% of everything in our workouts. And at the beginning of his senior year, I switched it on him. I didn't care about how many he made. He had to make whatever drill it was, primarily like jump shots, but he had to make 30% to make it challenge, because he wanted everything challenging. 30% of his shots had to be swishes for him to advance to the next drill. So he might go 8 for 10, but it didn't count because he didn't make 3 of them as swishes.
Nice.
So I need to blame you for some of my head coaching woes. When I was at Westminster, we played GAC. We had our best defender on Malcolm, half court, end of quarter. He just turns, elevates, and swishes it from half court. There's your swish, but perfect form with the guy in his face. Malcolm Chester doing everything he possibly could. And you could tell, sophomore, junior year, he was going to be big time. They should have offered all 3 of them. You're right.
Yeah, they should have offered him. Like I said, he was one of those guys. By no means did I think he would be NBA Rookie of the Year and in the NBA. But I had no doubt, just because he got better week after week and month after month, that I literally told those Division I guys, hey, he's not going to be your guy who averages 18 as a freshman. But I had zero doubt that he would average 15 as a senior. Like I said, I have no doubt on that. And they didn't want that type of guy at the time, right? They all want the big high flashing guy. He was super competitive. And then Lou Will would be number 2, as you guys mentioned. Lou Will at South Gwinnett was competitive on everything. I remember we would run the day before a game, we'd run dummy practices and shell defense and stuff. And one time, I think we were playing Chris Allen's Meadow Creek team, and they had Tiandre Williams, who went to Oregon. We were playing them on a Tuesday, and we were like doing a Monday walkthrough, sort of a light scrimmage or whatever. And, the second unit won 3-2. And I remember Lou being, and I don't like to cuss, but he was like, hell no, coach, we're running that back, just on like a walkthrough. And he didn't want to lose anything. And that's why I tell players, he made it to that point. And do we have time for another Lou Will story?
Oh yeah, definitely.
So when I knew he was going to be successful, is he told us probably about 3 days before he decided to go straight to the NBA. He told us probably 3 days before. And Coach Fleetwood brought him into the office and knew obviously I had some NBA, talked to some guys and stuff like that, even though I was young. And he asked Lou, he's like, Lou, what's your game plan? And I had, talked to so many of those guys before that said, hey, I'm going to average 20 next year, or I'm going to be an all-star my sophomore year. This is when I knew Lou was going to be good. He said, Coach, my first year in the league, I want to average 10 minutes. He said, my second year, I want to be in the rotation. And my third year, I want to be a starter. And I had never heard any future NBA guy say that. It was always, I'm going to average 25 next year. And when I heard him say that, I was like, dude, he's got his head on his shoulders. Like, he understands the process. And so he got drafted to the Sixers, and he didn't average 10 minutes, but he averaged, 5 minutes a game. So I said that wasn't going to be a letdown to him, because it was within the realm of what he thought was possible. Right. So when he told me that at the age of 18, I was like, yeah, he's going to be fine. He knows what he's doing.
And then my last question, biggest celebrity at a Lou Williams high school game, because they all used to go. Biggest celebrity you saw at one of the games?
I can't remember who we were playing, but sitting next to each other was Bow Wow, or Lil Bow Wow, Jermaine Dupri, Chipper Jones, and Michael Vick. They were at the same game. They were at the same game. I was just telling someone the other day, they were asking me, one of our coaches, who's like 28, he's like, what was it like? I said, you literally, those last 2 years, you had to get in there before the girls' game started to get a seat. Like, without a doubt. A Tuesday against a no-name we were playing Peachtree Ridge on a Tuesday. You had to be in the arena by 5 o'clock to get a seat.
I'll give you a quick one. I went to 3 games his senior year, and I got let in through the weight room by a football coach I knew at the time, and let me in all 3 times, or I would have.
Was it Willie Carter?
Yeah.
Willie Carter?
Yeah. It's the only reason I made him. So he was sneaking me in. And then, I remember one of the games I was at, Vic was at. I remember that was cool.
Oh yeah. He was at multiple games, and Bow Wow was at a lot. I remember Bow Wow was there a lot. Vic, a handful of times. Chipper Jones, I think just that one time. So it must have been, it was some really big game when all of them that were there. But it was
Awesome.
that was a hoot, man. Fun experience.
All right, your turn, Searle. Hit him up on the big lightning round.
Yeah, well, we got to give Lee credit though. He's been trying to hold himself to the shot clock. No other guests have ever done that.
And he's kept with the name dropping. I think the 4 guests may have got him over the top. He may have beaten up.
Chipper and Vic. Yeah, that's done it.
That's the Mount Rushmore of Atlanta.
There you go. All right. Well, Lee, camps, you run them. You've done them at all levels. You've worked them. What is the go-to camp drill activity to keep kids involved? If you got one thing for them to do today, what's it going to be?
Cutthroat 3-on-3. Picked it up from Snow Valley Camp. Jeff Dunlap ran a version of it out at Jack Haley's NBA Complete Player Camp. We have 11 camps going on this week throughout the entire Southeast. Nashville, Savannah, Birmingham, Charleston, Alpharetta, Shambler, you name it. And from 2:25 to 3 o'clock today, all 11 locations are going to be running Cutthroat 3-on-3. At the end of the day, all kids are active, no more than 15 kids at a hoop. That's what parents want to see. We give them lots of action, but 3-on-3 cutthroat with rules. We start on today's Tuesday, so they're probably at a 3-pass minimum with a 3 dribble max is where they should be at today. That is not even close. That was a no-brainer to answer that one. 3-on-3 cutthroat.
I love it. I love it. I think back to working Michigan camp with Steve Fisher and Dutcher, where there was the 3-on-3 cutthroat and they had a fast break drill, everything going, kids getting reps and competing. That's what they love. You're right. Sign them up. All right. So you're running a business. You're a basketball guy. We got to ask for where you do your learning. You got a book, you got a podcast that everybody needs to listen to, or that you just listened to or read that is going to be something that needs to be on our list.
Other than ours, of course.
Yes. Other than OBP.
If I had to say one person, a couple of people, but James Altucher has a podcast that I love listening to. Very insightful. He covers absolutely every subject across sports and technology and business and politics, and an absolute brilliant person who is someone that I listen to on a weekly basis. Simon Sinek. I've read multiple of his books. He will share videos of his with our coaching staff, and someone that I get a lot of quotes from. So James Altucher and Simon Sinek would be two names that I would pub that don't have anything to do with sports, that have everything to do with leadership and just making yourself better.
There you go. All right. You mentioned that you did stand up for 3 years. You got to give us a joke or two here. Give us your best, give us some of your best material. Go back there, Uncle Jerry.
Well, now I'm more, since I'm 43 and a half, 3 daughters, I've transitioned from telling stories in the Jerry Seinfeld, Brian Regan, Jim Gaffigan realm to dad jokes. But I will tell you the story as opposed to giving you a one-liner. Okay, I'll tell you. Where do dads keep their dad jokes?
Don't know.
Back pocket.
In a database.
Hey.
So I will tell you the story. I was always sort of the funny guy, telling jokes, making people laugh, doing pranks growing up. And so my junior year at St. Pius, I was named, whatever it's called, funniest guy in the school.
Class clown.
Not class clown, but superlatives. Oh. And so my dad was one of those who said, whatever you're gonna do, you're gonna be really good at it, right? If you want to quote Nick Saban, if you're gonna be the janitor, be the best darn janitor there is. And my dad said, if you want to be the funny guy, that's fine, but I'm gonna register you for a stand-up class. So my dad registered me for a class at Emory University in Atlanta called Evening Improv, and it was like an adult. Like how they even have evening adult classes. So I show up, I'm 17 years old. Everybody's, 21 to 50 years old in the class. And so it happened all summer. And our final class was we had to do stand-up at Eddie's Attic in downtown Decatur. Either of you guys been there?
Yep.
Yes.
So we had to do stand-up. on a Sunday, and I had done apparently a good job. He put me as last in the group, so I was the final guy up there, and Eddie's Attic, and then I did it at Streetlight Cafe in Midtown for a while. So my name just got around, and then when I went up to Athens, I did it at a couple bars, did it at the Georgia Theater, and started doing it, I guess, as what kids would say now as a side hustle, and did it for about 3 years, and absolutely loved it. I tell people that is of anything that I've done in my career, stand up is the number one thing that I've done. Everyone's biggest fear is what? What's the number one fear?
Standing in front of a crowd, being embarrassed.
Right. Public speaking. What's harder than public speaking? Getting in front of people, talking to them, but now I have to make them laugh. So once you have to, I did a show at Georgia Theater that had 3,000 people. Once you have to do that and you've told jokes where no one laughs at, I kid you not, talking in front of 300 parents at a camp, or I said going up to my now wife, and when I met her in Athens, going up and having the possibility of rejection from one girl, that was nothing. I've had 3,000 people boo at me before. So one girl saying, "No, I won't dance with you," that's nothing.
Next.
Yes,
All right. Hey, Lee, this is what you talk about off the beaten path. We're talking about Eddie's Attic and Georgia Theater doing stand-up. Gotta love it. I'll close out my section here with a question about the business again. Who are your competitors right now for EHB? Who do you compete with, and why should I send my kids to one of your spots, to your camps?
We had Mike Newsom, who's one of the heads of Nike football. He was in last week, brought his 11-year-old son, and he's, I believe, director of marketing for all of Nike football. And he asked me the same exact question before his kid came in. He goes, "What separates you guys apart?" And I said, our three phrases that we have up on our wall says motivate, innovate, and perspirate. Motivate in terms of going back to that energy part. Our coaches are going to motivate your kid, whether they want to be there or it's their first time. We are going to make sure that we bring that energy level to get the kid excited about the game of basketball, whether they're the beginner or they're the Malcolm Brogdon rising high school senior. The second thing is innovate in terms of coming up with new drills and not the old stuff that necessarily my coach taught me in the 1980s, coming up with new stuff, innovative stuff that's cutting edge, not necessarily technology, but new ways to teach players. And we do a lot of that through the 3-on-3 cutthroats and small sided games. And then the last one is perspirate. One of the reasons we hire former coaches and players is so that they can sweat and get in the drills with the kids. So by motivating, innovating, and perspirating with the kids has been our successful point, whether it's a day camp for a week or whether it's someone who trains with us night in and night out. There's multiple competitors, as I mentioned, in the space. There's Shoot 360, there's TSF, and then there's 100 really good basketball coaches and trainers in Atlanta. To take what you said about Jim Herrick said about John Wooden, he's not, what was it? He's not the best coach. He's the only coach.
Yeah.
Right.
That was it.
There's a lot of other people back there, but the people who have your kids' best intentions in mind, that are going to treat them the right way and give you the right culture. I send my own daughters to our program, and there's no doubt that we do from A to Z run it the best, not only in Atlanta but across the entire Southeast. That's why we'll have 5,000 kids at camp this summer, and we'll have 10,000 kids at some point in our program this year. Is because from A to Z we do everything the best.
How about that? Lee Miller, good stuff. Thank you for kind of wrapping it up there for us. Where can people find you? Where do they need to follow you? And even Uncle Jerry, where do they follow him? You got some handles for us that you want to toss out there?
Sure. On Twitter and Instagram, it's at Lee Miller Elite. And then our website is elitehoopsbasketball.com.
Lee, I think we're about coming to a close. Corey, you got a couple more to ask and wrap us up?
Yeah, Lee, do you got anything you want to say before you get out of here?
No, I appreciate the opportunity to be on here today. I think we're so very blessed to be a part of basketball. All three of us. It's opened up so many roads and opened up so many relationships. It's one of those true games that people usually say it's more golf and tennis that are lifelong sports, but I have no doubt that if I'm doing this in 80 years old, 90 years old, whatever it is, I'm going to be involved with the game of basketball in some form, in some fashion, still hanging out with coaches, going to watch NBA finals, Final Fours and all that stuff. It's just great that people like us can connect over the game of basketball.
Without a doubt. Very energetic, as he said, and I think it's awesome to see guys that do hoops in other areas other than playing and quote coach at a school. And not only is he doing it, he's as they like to say, doing it well. So we appreciate you coming out, Lee. Thanks for those listening to the podcast. It's a show for those who want to coach, those who used to coach, those who are coaching, those who follow coaches, those who hire and fire them. And hope you enjoyed the show.
Awesome. Thank you guys for having me on.
Thanks, Lee.